Our conversation with George Tenet. We'll read some of the mail later on. But joining us now from Washington is a man who worked directly for him. Michael Scheuer retired from the CIA in 2004 after running the bin Laden unit and running the al-Qaeda detainee and rendition program. So you're the perfect guy to have here. Now, I got some answers, and some answers he simply wouldn't say. So I'm going to ask you the stuff he wouldn't answer. Maybe you can, or if you don't want to, don't. Tell me why, though. Let's go to the torture. Both President Bush, when I interviewed him, and Mr. Tenet, would not define what torture was. Therefore, it leaves the field wide open for the New York Times and all the people overseas who don't like America to say we're a torture nation. And the American people, they don't know what exactly is coerced interrogation, torture. Can you clear that up at all?
You know, Mr. O'Reilly, I don't know what the definition of torture is. I think people default to the Hollywood definition of bamboo shoots under the fingernails and drills through the teeth with no Novocaine. That's certainly not the kind of thing that is done to anybody by the United States intelligence officers. I think what you read in the paper about waterboarding or sleep deprivation or loud noise probably is accurate. I don't think those fall anywhere near torture. And you have to juxtapose it against what we're trying to do. Mr. Tenet was very accurate in saying, we don't know what was going on in this country after 9/11.
Right. So you used them. They were effective. So all these people that say, oh, you never get anything from that, they don't know what they're talking about. And we said that, we discussed this before, you and I
Yes,
have, that they just don't know, because you do. You do when you dunk people in the water or keep them up. Some of these people give you stuff that save lives. That's correct, right?
Some of it does, sir. I would say that personally, I think you have to be very careful with the information you gather through this means. But it has indeed saved lives, and it has indeed, as Mr. Tenet said, provided some vision into al-Qaeda's organization.
Now, is it true that whenever you wanted to do that, you went to the Attorney General, in this case Ashcroft, to say, look, we're going to do this and sign off on it?
I think the general program was certainly signed off on by the Department of Justice, by the attorneys at the National Security Council, and certainly by the division-sized Office of Attorneys at the Central Intelligence Agency. I think one thing that's forgotten, sir, and that's one point I would make about Mr. Tenet's book. It's very political. Under Mr. Bush, Americans are holding prisoners. Under Mr. Clinton, all of the people we rendered were taken to places like Egypt and other Arab tyrannies that really had no human rights regards at all.
But he says that it's a wrong presumption to think that they were tortured there. That's what Tenet said.
I think the only safe presumption is that they were tortured or were treated with far less than U.S. standards. One of the things the agency was extraordinarily concerned about, frankly, to protect our own officers, was that if we took someone to a foreign country that the State Department was going to identify as a human rights abuser at some point, we wanted to make sure Mr. Clinton, Mr. Berger, Mr. Clark knew that. And they got a little puckered up on that and said, well, will those countries agree to treat them according to their own standards? And we said, we're pretty sure they'll do that, sir, but that doesn't get you off the hook.
Okay, so most of the rendition stuff that you know about took place under the Clinton administration. They were doing it in the early 90s. Now, here's the interesting thing. In Tenet's book, he said Janet Reno, Attorney General, told him, under no circumstances can you kill bin Laden. It's illegal. Yet Bill Clinton came on this show, and I'm sure you saw it, saying, I tried to kill him, I tried to kill him, I tried to kill him. Now, Tenet wouldn't burn Bill Clinton on the show, and leaving a lot of people to think, well, is it Reno who's crazy, or what did Clinton know? Can you clarify that?
I can from my own experience, sir. Every chance that we have had to kill or capture Osama bin Laden, except for Tora Bora, occurred while I was the chief of operations for al-Qaeda in Washington, D.C. At no point was I aware of any permission to kill Osama bin Laden. The director was exactly right last night. And either Mr. Richard Clark and Mr. Sandy Berger and President Clinton are either lying or misremembering, one or the other. But there was no authorization to kill bin Laden.
All right, well, that's fairly clear. Now, let's get on to Tora Bora. You know, bin Laden gets away, and Mr. Tenet says, listen, it was a CIA operation, but we didn't have enough people to seal that area. And I said, well, was it Franks' fault? He's the guy, Tommy Franks, did he not give you the guys? And Tenet covered for Franks. Was that accurate?
I think it was. Our officers were on the ground. I know. Gary Bernstein wrote a very good book called Jawbreaker about this, and he specifically asked for Marines or Special Forces to come in and seal the border. The generals and the president, I'm afraid, were very concerned about not losing U.S. soldiers, which is a good concern. But instead, they subcontracted the job to several Afghan Mujahideen commanders.
So that was a Bush.
Yeah.
That was a Bush problem there.
Yes.
That they didn't want to bring our guys in real quick to put them in harm's way.
Yes, sir.
One more question, because and I really appreciate you being a straight shooter here, because it was frustrating as I wanted to get some of the information out and I couldn't get it out. You basically have George Tenet saying, look, I went to Condoleezza Rice 2 months before 9/11, sat her down, looked her in the eye, said, we're going to get hit. We don't know how, but we're going to get hit. And really no elevations anywhere, no airline warnings. They kept in the dark. Nothing was done. And I'm saying to myself, what is that? Was it just that they ignored it? They were naive? They screwed up? Can you clarify it at all?
I think Mr. Tenet may be exaggerating a bit of what he told to Ms. Rice. In my own personal experience, Mr. Tenet was never one who felt comfortable as DCI recommending military action to anyone. He would refuse to do that.
He wasn't a confrontational guy. Because I said to him, I would have been in banging the president's desk if I had that information.
Mr. O'Reilly, it's absolutely unconscionable that any director of Central Intelligence didn't bypass the National Security Advisor to go to the President of the United States. If that's not his job, then I'm sadly unaware of what his job should be.
All right. Doctor, thanks very much. We appreciate it, and I hope everybody enjoyed the interview.